some authorities should be there. Now, here in this religion, it is very interesting. God-centered religions, authority is God. Now, the distinction you can see when you contrast it with system like Buddhism, where there is no God. So for ethics, there is no authority of God. Ethics, no authority of God. But when you say authority of God, of course, again, we know by definition, God is all good, God knows everything, God can do anything. So, with these characteristics of God, ethics cannot go wrong. Okay? Now, this is the idea. So, such God gives you ethics, then you accept it. This is the idea. So ethics, divine origination of ethics, actually the meaning of that is that. So now in 10 commandments, the concept of command is really a command, like you give an order someone to do something. So that is the concept of commandment. Now commandment comes from authority. Commandments come from authority. When somebody with authority says, we usually don't question it. That is the idea of authority. Because with the authority, some weight comes, so we don't question it. We accept it. So, this idea of the God's authority as the source of ethics is, something very interesting. Again, you can see that in a system where the God's authority is not there. For example, think about the source of ethics according to Buddhism. Why we consider according to Buddhism certain things are to be good and certain things are to be bad. Now, simply is it because Buddha said that? Now, in the Kalam Sutta, Buddha very clearly says that, do not accept something simply because your teacher says, Samano no Garuti. This particular person is my teacher. Now, Kalam Sutta is remarkable in that sense. Because where Kalam Sutta, Buddha says, Ma Anusavena. Now, Anusava means Shruti. Now, Shruti is scripture, revelation. Now, Indian language, we call it not revelation, but Shruti. Shruti means what you hear, what you heard. Of course, what you heard means what you heard from God. But that is not the only thing. Now, concept of Shruti is basically what you heard from God. Now, what about when we have suttas, Evang me sutang? Evang me sutang. You can interpret it as me, my sutang heard Evang in this manner. What I heard is this manner. Or you can say, I have heard in this manner. Evang me, by me, sutang heard. My hearing is this. Or I have heard it this manner. Now, what is the meaning of this? Every sutta begins with Evang me sutang. How should you understand it? Isn't it different from Shruti? Anusava? Anusava. It comes from Sunati. Anusava, Anusrava. Anusrava means really concept of Shruti. So, Shruti is what is heard, and then Anusava is the same thing. But what about Evang me sutang? So, Shruti, actually, Anusava is the same thing. Now, what about sutang? Now, in the commentaries, Evang me sutang has a long commentary. If you look at commentary, you can see that Evam Me Sutang has been described in many different ways. But Evam Me Sutang in the Buddhist tradition is being understood not as a divine revelation, but this is what I heard. Now when Venerable Ananda says, this is what I heard, actually in the Buddhist tradition, he tries to say that this is not my word. I am not the author. This is what I heard from the Buddha. So, in a way, he is giving the authorship to the Buddha. He is dissociating himself. He says that, no, this is not my word. This is the word of the Buddha. Now, that is understandable because, Venerable Ananda is, although one of the leading disciples, he is a disciple. Now, he can't say, this is the Dhamma. But what he can say is, this is what I heard. This is what I heard from the Buddha. Okay. But at the same time, in the Indian tradition, it is very difficult to say that it doesn't carry some kind of authority also. And then when you say, this is not my word, this is what I heard from the Buddha, this is what I heard. Now, heard from whom? Heard from the Buddha. Right? Now, when Venerable Ananda says, this is what I heard from the Buddha, also there is authority, right? If you heard from the Buddha, it is Buddha's words. So, it serves a dual purpose. In a way, it gives authority and the authorship to the Buddha. At the same time, Ananda says, but, the Buddha's word is, not really considered to be revelation. Now, when the Buddha says, Ma samanono garu, don't accept something thinking that this samana is our teacher. Now, what do you think? Is it self-applicable? Now, Buddha says that don't accept something because it is your teacher. Now, Buddha is saying this. Who is Buddha? He is the teacher. Now, when Buddha says don't accept something because it is said by your teacher, what about that particular thing? No, what I mean is, what about that statement? The statement says, don't accept something because your teacher says. Now, who is saying this? Your teacher. Now, don't accept this because your teacher says, but isn't there a problem? Teacher says, don't accept because the teacher says. So, can't you argue that even that statement has to be not accepted? What do you think? Logically speaking, even that statement has to be rejected, isn't it? In philosophical language, we use this term, something to be self-reference, and something can be self-referentially true, something can be self-referentially false. Now, when you take this, the Buddha says that don't accept something because your teacher says, of course, it could be applicable to itself. But, it becomes a logical problem because it is something like you can interpret it as saying, don't accept any other thing. Not this, not what I am saying, but anything else or something like that. There are ways to overcome that problem. But the important thing is this. In Buddhism, you have some kind of criteria other than the source. Do you get my point? What I'm saying is, you say you attribute certain idea to some source. But Buddhism seems to be saying that whatever the source, the value of the idea has nothing to do with the source. In other words, a good thing can be coming from the Buddha, a good thing can be coming from completely ordinary person. So what you really look is not the source of the idea, but the idea itself. Okay? Not the source of the idea, not the where the idea coming from. Ideas can come from any source. Maybe it is in a sacred book, or idea can be in a piece of paper, or somebody totally unimportant person could have said that. Whatever the source, idea's worth depends on some other thing, not the source. Now I think this is the point very important here. Because when we talk about the divine origin, we go to the source of the idea. Okay? We go to the source of the idea, because the source of the idea is good, we take the idea good. But if really God exists, if God is like what they define, omniscient, omnipotent, then no problem really. But the problem is there is a big if God exists, because we are not sure about it. And then even if God exists, we are not sure whether such God is omnipotent, omniscient, and all good. Now, there are these two very important ifs, questions. We are not sure. If God exists, if God is like that, then no problem, you accept it. But the thing is, we are not sure. And then Buddha says that don't accept because you're a teacher, because we usually put a lot of weight on the teacher. Buddha says don't accept. But then that shows that the value of an idea rests not exclusively on the source of the idea, but some other considerations. Okay? Whatever the source. Now, even what the Buddha says, ultimately, you accept not simply because Buddha said that, but for some other reason. I mean, this is how Buddhism began. But of course, we have to admit that subsequently it changed. Now, in the later tradition, what the Buddha said? Sabbanyu bhasita, sarvagnya bhasita. Buddha is sarvagnya. And then, we accept, we never question. But that is a subsequent tradition. In the subsequent tradition, Buddha Vachana we never question. But Buddha said that, no, actually even the Buddha is not really the ultimate source. Religiously, this is very important when you look at this ethics coming from God. So it is not, what is important is not really the source. Source can be questioned. But then what about the nature of the idea? You look at the nature of the idea. Now, for example, Buddha gives different criteria. Now, in the Ambalatika Rahulovada Sutta, Buddha says, if something is harmful to you, harmful to the other, harmful to both, don't do that. Now, of course, Buddha says that, but you can think about it. So the criterion is ultimately not simply because Buddha said that. You can see whether something is harmful to you, harmful to the other, and harmful to the both. Now you see the ethics does not depend on the Buddha. I mean, nobody likes to be harmed. Nobody likes damage. Okay? I mean, it's a common sense. I don't like any damage. I don't like any harm. I don't like any disadvantage. So if something is not good for you, not good for me, not good both, then... Now, Buddha says that, but of course, it is within our within our limits to see and understand it. And Buddha says, don't kill anybody because you love your life. He also likes his life. Now, this again is very interesting. It is not although Buddha says that, we know that we love our life so much. Attanang upabankatva. Compare it with yourself, don't do that. So again, the criterion is not the Buddha, but yourself. You look at your life, you love your life so much. So if you don't want to lose your life, you should not really deprive any other person of his or her life. Now, I can go on and on, there are so many criteria like that. But that's not the point. The point is this. Now, when you say something is the divinely originated, we give authority to it. But as I said, divine origination, there are some problems because we are not sure. If divine origination, the God is there, then no problem. If God has these qualities, then also no problem. But we are not sure about either of these things. Now, in such a situation, the divine origin ethics is, the really a issue. Okay. Now, Buddhism provides a different type of answer to this question. Buddhism provides different type of answer. The Buddhist answer is ultimately the value of the idea is not its source, but how you judge according to your knowledge and experience. So now that is something that we really need to think about it. Morality as God-given. Now, when Judeo-Christian tradition says morality is God, actually that has another implication. That implication is so they say that God is all good. Now, when you say God is all good, that means God is the source of goodness. Okay. Now, this means that you can say God as source of goodness. So, the God is all good, which means God as the source of goodness. Now, if there is a source of goodness, if ethics come from God, then of course there is no question about it, because it should be good. Do you see the point? Logically, we can say if God is all good, if God is the source of goodness, then of course ethics coming from God is good. Now, this has another implication. So, ethics coming from, we can say this means that ethics, we simply say coming from God, we can say good. Also, this indicates that good, we say ethics, comes only from God. Good ethics comes only from God. Also, it could be interpreted as if no God, then no ethics. Now, all these things are there. Now, when we say God is all good, we say God is the source of goodness. Ethics come from God is good. Not only that, look at the last two sentences. Good ethics come only from God. If no God, then no ethics. Now, you see the connection. Now, this is why in ordinary English usage, if you are a non-believer, if you don't believe in God, you can't be a good person. You see the connection? Because that's the idea. So, the English language, if you say you are an atheist, atheist means bad person, morally bad person. In order to distinguish, sometimes I use the word non-theist, because atheist has a negative meaning. That negative meaning comes from this equation, because you identify God with goodness, so ethics has to come from God. So, if you don't believe in God, you don't have good ethics. So, so this divine origin ethics is, something you can see how it is important. How the religious belief is considered to be, the essentially connected with the concept of God. Now, the Buddha was doing very difficult thing. Buddha was doing a very difficult thing, because what the Buddha was doing is no God. But still ethics are there. I mean, even you deny God, but of course that's not a denial of ethics. Buddha says no God, but good and bad is there. Now, how good and bad is there? As I showed you, is ultimately you look at yourself. We have certain generalizations. Sabbe tasanti dandas. Sabbe tasanti dandas. Sabbe. All don't like harm. So those are the bases. That's very beautiful, okay? Because rather than going to God, Buddha says, nobody likes pain. Now that's a universal statement. Human beings don't like pain, animals don't like pain, birds don't like pain, nobody likes pain. So then based on that, Buddha says, don't give pain. So Buddha brings ethics back to the ordinary world. Ethics was connected to divine world, up there, but we call it Buddha brings ethics down to earth. Okay? Buddha brings ethics down to earth. So then you decide, you know how you are. You love your life. So attanang upamankatva. Sabbeta santidandasa. Now these are, the criteria according to which you determine what is good and what is bad. Okay? Not divine. So you see the difference. So if you take the Judeo-Christian tradition, you can see the concept of God is inseparably tied with the idea of goodness, ethics. So in ethics there is a theory called divine command theory. Some ethicists study of ethics. Some people say that because of this, the ethics come from God. So that is the divine command theory. Now, in order to accept divine command theory, you have to believe in God. Now, the problem is this. When you exclusively place ethics on God, the moment you don't believe God, you don't have ethics. That's the problem. Moment you reject God, you also reject ethics. But what a religion like Buddhism shows is you can reject God but still keep ethics. Particularly, personally, I believe that now for some people who don't believe in God, because of this equation, they can't be moral, they can't be ethical, because, they think that, okay, God is not there, so you don't have to worry about ethics. But it's not that. God may be not there, but still you have to be concerned about ethics. Now, the significance of Buddhist philosophy is that you retain ethics on different grounds, psychological grounds, and also based on human nature, like sabbeta santidandas. Okay, so you look at carefully, you can see that this particular thing is very important. So morality is given by God according to Judeo-Christian types of religion, but on the other hand, the morality is established in religions without concept of God. We will move into the very last thing, eschatology. The doctrines associated with the end of the world, resurrection of the dead, final judgment, the second coming of Messiah, and the world to come, heaven, are key elements of this doctrine. Now, this is the last aspect I want to discuss with you when we discuss Judeo-Christian tradition, this eschatology. Eschatology basically means the study of the things, last things. Eschatology means that, a study of the last things, a study of what happens at the end. This concept of end is something very fundamental to Christian theology, Judeo-Christian tradition. According to them, we have the creation. So, God created the world. And this created world, this continues. And it goes on like that. So ultimately, we have the end. So the world is over. Now, this belief that universe starting from creation and continuing and finally coming to an end. Okay. Now this is a fundamental belief. Now this idea that world will be destroyed at some point, according to this belief, world will be destroyed at some point. Actually, I have read some material, like at the beginning of very Christian religion, during that time, people had really believed that at any moment world will be destroyed. God will destroy the world, and there will be a new beginning. So people had really believed that. Now that belief is very fundamental. They believe that the world is destroyed, and then the Messiah or the Savior comes back and saves those people, and then others will be sent to hell, and then everything will be over. So this concept, and this called judgment, final judgment. Final judgment. Now this word judgment is given by the judge. Now the main virtue of the judge is justice. The whole purpose of judge is to do justice, implement the justice. Now you remember at the very beginning of today's discussion, we looked at the God's, one attribute of God is justice. Because God is the ultimate judge. God is the one who decides. As I showed to you, karma according to Buddhism is a natural process. But according to Judeo-Christian tradition, it is God who ultimately decides. So this judgment day, so actually end is another word, another way to look at end is, this is what is called judgment day. So that day, everybody will be raised from their graves, and then God will pass judgment. Now, if you look at Judeo-Christian tradition, usually in this tradition, they don't cremate people. They don't burn the bodies. They bury them. Now, in the Islamic tradition, within 24 hours, they don't do anything to the body. No embalm, no nothing, no removal, complete body is buried. The one main reason is this, the idea that ultimately one day you will have to get up from your graves and you will be judged. So, that literal meaning is there. That is why bodies are not cremated. In the Buddhist tradition and many traditions, we burn the bodies because, once you are dead, it's just a piece of rotten meat, so nobody cares about it. But then in this tradition, it is not. So, this whole concept of judgment day, final day, end of the universe, end are very, very important in this tradition. So eschatology means actually the part of the religion that deals with that. So the idea is the second coming of the Messiah. Now Jesus came and Jesus went back to heaven. So Jesus is coming back. Now coming back happens at the end of the world. Haven't you seen sometime in the churches you have Jesus is coming soon? Okay, Jesus is coming soon. Because the idea is that at any moment Jesus will come. Particularly at the turn of the Christian the era, during these first couple of centuries, when things were going very bad, people really had believed that, the end of the day will come any moment. So you have to get ready for that. You have to be, get ready for this phase. I mean, like, it can be an ethical injunction, make people good people. Any moment the end will come and you have to be ready, you have to be a good person or something. So then you can understand it as some kind of moral injunction, something that, the prompt you to be moral. But apart from that, people literally believe that world will be over. Literally believe that world will be over and, God will appear and, give the judgment. So, this judgment and justice is something very interesting. Ultimately, till the world and, you are in this intermediate state, Now, at that moment, everybody is raised from their burials, and then judgment goes, either you are going to heaven or you go to hell. And then eternal heaven and eternal heaven. So these are basically what is covered by eschatology. And then within that you have this concept of universe created at particular point and then moving. And this is the basic Christian idea. Sometimes this is called teleology. Teleology means everything has a purpose. Things are moving to realize that purpose. God's creation has a purpose. Things are moving to realize that purpose. These ideas. Actually, these are very alien to Buddhism, because the Buddhist concept is, we believe that Sangvatta, Sangvattamana, Vivatta, Vivattamana. So we believe in some kind of circle. So Sangvattamana means Sangvatta, Sangvrutta, contract. Sangvatta, it remains contracted. And then Vivatta, gradually expand. And remains expanded. Again, this process. But then, at the conclusion of any one process, according to Buddhist belief, also the world, will be over. Like if you look at the discourses like Satta Suryugamana Sutta, at some point there will be one sun now, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So when the 7 suns are blazing, everything will be burned. But then, again things start. If you look at Agganya Sutta is this story, right? World destroyed and remain covered with water sometime, and then again, water goes down and the nice, the flow comes, and, the people come from Abhasara world. These are kind of beliefs. Now, Christianity, the difference is Christianity has this belief, world will be completely over until and unless God created again. Okay? So this is idea. Now, other religions, including Buddhism also has this idea. But then the difference between Buddhism and Christian view is final, eschatology. But in Buddhism, Sangvattamana, Sangvatta, at the end of the circle, the world will be destroyed, but it starts again. The difference is, it is a process. It goes on. There is no one to start it. No one to do that. No person to do that. When it is happening, people come from Abhasara world and start again from beginning and, do agriculture and, the story in the Agganya Sutta. Okay, so what is called eschatology, the doctrines associated with the end of the world, resurrection of the dead, final judgment, the second coming of the Messiah, and the world to come heaven are key elements of this doctrine. Actually, the eschatology is, you can see, not only the Judeo-Christian tradition idea. I think every religion has some kind of belief about how things are concluded. Okay, but only thing is it differs according to their belief. Buddhism being non-theist, the beginning and end is not something done by somebody. But the Christianity is so. Even in the Hinduism, we have that Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara. Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the maintainer, Maheshwara is the destroyer. So the creation and destroying. So, these ideas are in a way common to all religions. But even though they are common, they have the ideas being shaped according to their fundamental philosophy. So in Buddhism, because there is no belief in God, you can see that fundamentally the process is given as a natural process. Okay, what I want to do today with you is, in my previous discussion, we discussed Abrahamic religions. Today what I did is, we looked at certain beliefs common to all Abrahamic religions. And then we also looked at comparatively how would Buddhism has these things. Okay, this is basically what I did. I think I am pretty much, those are the only things that come into my mind at the moment. So do you have any questions or any comments or any ideas or anything?